everyone, this is Jotto. Now, this is a bit of a weird video I'm going to make. I haven't made a video like this in the past because I haven't needed to. But this is going to be sort of my take on the tournament from yesterday and how I did in it, and a couple of things I've been having issues with as regarding to the last patch. The weekly show is going to come out on Monday. This took like half an hour to make, so don't worry, this didn't take any time out of the weekly show thing. It'll still be up on Monday. But anyway, basically, yesterday we had the first tournament after the wipe, and I managed to come second, so I was really pleased with that. But I was the only rogue player. There weren't any other ones, and it's not because everyone was playing them because they're overpowered, but the nerfs they made to the class actually changed the playstyle. And that's not the correct way of doing things. I've been tinkering around with some of the changes to a lot of classes, and I'm at the stage right now where the more and more I look at the changes, the less and less I like them. And I'm not really sure what to think. Currently, the changes I have the most issue with are things like Northshire Cleric. I think should have been a 1-2 because some classes can't even deal with it on turn 1. So they just instantly get behind. Battle Rage, the nerf. Like, basically, if you're going to buff a class, you buff the class. You don't buff one card. But those are more minor. What I'm actually going to discuss is the rogue changes. Specifically, Backstab. Now, Backstab is a change which I am incredibly angry at Blizzard for making, because there has been several situations where the actual change hasn't affected what would have happened. It's just made me misplay for no reason. There's actually been situations, this happened in the tournament yesterday, and I almost got knocked out of 2 best of 3s in the top 8 because of this, where I tried to backstab after using a shiv. Because that's what I'm trained to do. Like, I train myself to draw first and then use backstab second. But you can't do that anymore, but I already had backstab in my hand. So, what? This is the only time it's ever come up. I've had lots of other instances where it's just like, it's a very finicky card now. It makes you misplay for no reason, and that's awful design. The actual card isn't weaker in 99% of situations, but it makes you misplay. And a card that literally is designed to make you misplay is awful as far as design goes. I had a lot of issues with Backstab now, and it's not because the card is weaker, it's because it actually makes you misplay for no reason. The other problem I've been having with it is things like Injured Blade Master. You randomly can't target with Backstab. It's incredibly gimmicky. Like, Injured Blade Master being 4-3 was good, but not being able to target it with Backstab is just weird. And this is what I've been trying to get across to people, that the Backstab change didn't make the card weaker, it just made it more of like not a skill test, more of a you're paying attention to absolutely everything that could possibly happen test. And it's gonna mess up a lot of people. I almost got knocked out of a tournament because of it twice. There was several rogue players I've been talking to, although there aren't that many of them anymore, I must admit, that really didn't like the way they handled the backstab change. Backstab wasn't really the issue. I'm still abusing sap. Sap still wrecks people. It's still probably the most powerful card that rogues have. I'm going to maintain that. It's a ridiculous card. But then backstab was just a change that's designed to make you misplay, and that's awful in my opinion. But the other problems I've been noticing with how they change rogues is there's one viable rogue archetype now, which is rogue aggro spell power. That's it. The rest of the rogue archetypes that people wanted to play are unplayable now. Weapon rogue can't hit the damage numbers they need anymore. Miracle rogue gets countered incredibly easily and goes off a turn later anyway, which means that they're not even a threat. So what Blizzard ended up doing to rogues is alienating the rogue player base. If you ask any of the competitive players right now, none of them want to play rogue apart from me. Everyone was super surprised when I was playing rogue. And if you go on ladder, on high level ladder, you'll come across a rogue once every 30 games maybe. No one plays rogue at the moment because they changed rogues so much that all the archetypes people wanted to play before don't work. And that's handled pretty poorly, in my opinion. They really should test this stuff. They should know better. And the sad thing is, this will probably stay like this for months, because Team 5 doesn't release patches often at all. So this will stay like this for months before they change anything. And that's really disappointing for me, because I actually play Rogue, and I will still play Rogue because I like the class. But a lot of people who liked playing the class didn't play the archetype I did. Now their preferred archetype is unplayable, so they have to switch classes, and that's an awful state of affairs. And it's just something which I feel like has to be out there. Like, this is general feedback where if you're gonna nerf something, you can't nerf it into the ground. Like, Miracle Rogue was made unplayable. That's an archetype that's been around for ages, and a lot of people love it. And that's been nerfed into the ground. Weapon Rogue, that wasn't even that strong, doesn't work anymore. The aggro Rogue deck still works fine, although it's very clunky now, which is not nice. But then if you look at some of the other classes are doing absolutely fine. I mean, we had Shamans weren't nerfed, which was weird. Priests were made... Alright, Priests, they needed a buff. Don't get me wrong, they needed a buff, but the buffs they made didn't help the game. In fact, I think that the buffs they made to Priest damaged the game as a whole. They made Priest better, but they damaged the game as a whole. What do I mean? Is things like Shadow Word Death makes entire decks stop playing things with 5 or more attack if they don't have a Battle Cry or a Death Rattle. I've been talking to a lot of the top players. I talked to Spaj, who was incredibly irritated with the Priest changes because he can't play Earth Elemental, for example, anymore, and Fire Elemental dies to it, and things like Argent Commander is going to become much better now. And Northshire Cleric, some decks can't even kill it, but then other decks like Shamans have no issue with that card. And yeah, it's just things like that. I mean, the Holy Fire change was amazing. I like Holy Fire, I like the new Holy Fire, I love that card actually. The Lightspawn change was fine, I think it's actually decent now. Having played with it, it's actually decent as a 5/5. Lightspawn was fine, Holy Fire was fine, Northshire Cleric should have been a 1-mana 1/2, and Shadow Word Death should not have been added. Something else should have been added that wasn't based around attack, because it really does funnel some decks, and yet some other decks, like, I don't have a problem against Priest. Why? Because I play a deck with nothing more than 4 attack, so they can't target it. So they just have 2 dead cards in their deck. It's an awful mechanic, in my opinion, to have something like that. And it's something which, in testing, seems to work, but when you actually put it into the game, it single-handedly managed to damage the metagame yesterday, and that's not good. That is not a good sign. For Warriors, the buffs, all of the buffs were good, apart from Battle Rage. I would have preferred if they buffed several other Warrior cards as opposed to giving them a draw spell which always draws 4 or 5. Something I've had a lot of issues with. This is the new Battle Rage. It doesn't make sense compared to Arcane Intellect. It doesn't make sense compared to Arcane Intellect, and that is sad, in my opinion. Arcane Intellect is a directly worse version. In 99.9% of situations, it's just directly worse. And I don't seem to understand why Blizzard seemed to do that. I mean, Warriors needed draw power because their cards were awful. So instead of making their cards stronger, they gave them a draw power spell, which is completely absurd. So while most of the Warrior changes were good, the Battle Rage one I think will be revisited in the future because that's an incredibly overpowered card right now. Besides that, though, the rest of the changes, Twilight Drake went well. That's been pretty good. It's still played, but it's not broken anymore. Things like Injured Blade Master, besides the weird backstab interaction, is actually okay now. The Mage changes were very good. You're starting to see, apart from Mirror Image, you're starting to see both of the other 2 cards being played more. It's nice to see that. And yeah, besides the changes to Battle Rage, Priest to some extent, and Rogue, the actual patch was pretty good. I mean, the Druid changes, they hurt a bit, but not that much. They were in line essentially. Shaman was one which was just ridiculous. Like this is something which actually did come up on Noxious Dream, which was the frog being a beast actually won a guy a game. Like, I don't even know why it's a beast. They made it a beast for no reason. It's like, oh, this is flavorful, and it's also gonna lose you a game every so often. So I don't understand why it was made a beast. The healing totem change didn't change much. It did a bit, but not much. And yeah, shamans are still just as powerful, but they can't play in the way they want to because of the way Shadow Word Death works. So there's not much you can say about it. The other thing I have a problem with, especially with Priest, is Thought Steal and Mind Vision. Thought Steal and Mind Vision are two cards which I think need to be redesigned, and Mind Games, because I really don't see the point in having a I'm gonna play with your deck mechanic, because no one likes it. No one wants it. Like, the Priest players who like the mechanic like it because they get to troll people. That's actually it. Because they get to troll people. No one who plays against a Priest likes Thought Steal, because you've got to think about what they could have from your deck, and that's an awful way of doing it, because sometimes that Thought Steal wins them the game on its own, because they get two cards which are completely insane from your opponent's deck that was exactly what you needed. And a bunch of people are like, oh, it's just draw 2 for 3, it's balanced. But no, if they Mind Vision 2 eviscerates from your deck and kill you because you're on 8 health and no Priest card can do that to you, yeah, you'll come back to me saying Thought Steal is ridiculous, because Thought Steal, it gives you information on your opponent's deck, and if your opponent's deck is good, it's the most overpowered draw spell in the game. If your opponent's deck is bad, it's the worst draw power. It's the worst draw power game. It's just so imbalanced as a mechanic. I really don't like the mechanic, and no one does. It's so inconsistent. It's extra RNG you shouldn't have to deal with. And I feel like the changes to Priest, they needed a buff, but the changes they made were so sort of finicky. They just affected the game too much, and that's a rather large issue in my opinion. They affected the actual meta game too much. People are terrified of turn 1 Northshire Cleric. It's actually pretty much as bad as turn 1 Defias Ringleader for some people, and you can't even do turn 1 Defias Ringleader against Northshire Cleric, because they just kill the token that heal a Northshire Cleric. Congratulations. It's really rather ridiculous, to be honest, the changes they made. The neutral changes were good. All the neutral changes were amazing. I've seen the neutral changes in action, they were good. The class changes this patch, most of them were good apart from Battle Rage, Priest, and Rogue, were the 3 sections which I have issues with. But overall the patch was positive, but it's just those 3 things should never have happened. And while Priest needed a buff, Rogue needed a nerf, these were not the ways of going around it, and it's been causing a lot of issues in the competitive scene recently. I hope that there are more Rogues that turn up, because I'm hoping that people recover from the Rogue nerf, but to be honest, with there only being 1 deck around, and if you look pre-patch, I was the only person playing it. Like, maybe 1 or 2 other people played it, but it's not an archetype that a lot of Rogue players like playing, because it's a different playstyle. So people who like playing Rogue before won't just switch because it's a different playstyle, so they won't play it. So I'm expecting 90% of the Rogue players to switch to different classes, and we're going to see practically no Rogues in tournament attendance like we saw yesterday. But anyway, that was sort of a little patch rant I had to go on about, because having played with the patch, it just seems that they added a bunch of things which actually were detrimental to the game as opposed to a positive sort of outlet, and that makes me sad because these are going to be around for months. But anyway, as for now, this has been Jotto, signing off.